Hello, and welcome to Hey, I Like, a podcast where we talk about all the things that make our neurodivergent brains go bonkers. I am your host, Jess. I use she, they pronouns, and I am here with my very good friend, who is here to tell us about some more interesting things. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kent. I'm also sometimes known as Inquisitor Psyduck, and I'm today just gonna spout a few stories that I've picked up over the years, and just odd little tangential tales. One that's kind of depressing, really, but also kind of spooky, so you can always just repeat this episode during a spooky season. And then two more uplifted, well, one comedic, but not really, but it is, but you shouldn't be laughing at it thing. And one that's an interesting just story about how things got done years ago. So, yeah.
Very cool. I think when you proposed this episode, you described the topic as where the bodies are buried on campus.
So that's actually going to be our first part, which is the kind of tragic bit, and I went through with notes last night going, okay, I don't really know a lot of the technical explanations. I know what we called it, but not what the official name was. Okay. And then I looked it up and went, no wonder, even in our not as enlightened as we are today class of, student-teacher relationships, we didn't call it this. This is bad. So,
well, I'm definitely intrigued.
Well, okay. So, I'm not going to name the campus in particular, just in case somebody legally jumps up and goes, "Oh, how dare you!" Even though I think technically it doesn't exist anymore by the names of how it was when I was there. So,
always a good
start. We're just gonna, there was a lot of politics that happened, so we're just gonna ignore that right now. But we'll picture it as a certain decade at the end of the 20th century. Where there was construction on this campus. They were in a phase of massive growth. I mean, when I was there, my freshman year, it's oh yeah, we got 8 buildings on campus. By the time I left, it was they had added 4 more. Complete buildings. Fully operational, and this is the most expansion they've done in a decade. So, but, I have a degree in anthropology, which here in the U.S., one of the main focuses is archaeology, which I know over in the U.K., archaeology and anthropology are actually separated.
Yes.
They're two different branches. Here, the same branch. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
But, one of my professors is talking about how, he's sitting in his lab, it's Thursday or something, I think. It's either Thursday or Friday for him. And a workman comes in. Hey, we keep finding these. What is this? What kind of animal is this? And hands him a bone.
Okay.
And he looks at it and goes, pretty sure that's human femur.
Oh!
Here, let me check here. Oh, wait. It doesn't look like any cattle or anything. Well, it turns out they had hit a cemetery. And they hit a cemetery a while ago.
Oh.
Now, here's the backstory behind this. Back 100 years ago, or actually by now it's over 100 years ago, we're talking 130 years ago now.
Yeah.
That area, there's a very sizable area of the city, was once the Indiana School for the Feeble-Minded Youth.
Lovely name.
Yeah, this is why we kind of called it the State Developmental Farm when we were discussing it among ourselves. But it was, if you were mentally handicapped, or reading up on it, I guess if you were emotionally handicapped, if you had, like, what we would call clinical depression as a youth, you were there.
Yeah.
And all that would happen is, it is a farm. It was a functioning farm. But they also tried teaching some trades. But they had their own cemetery on site. Because I guess besides the fact that you could have suicides, this was also, healthcare. People died.
Yeah.
So, they really didn't mark graves with gravestones out there. And sorry if you hear squeaking, the dog just decided to walk up and start playing.
I love your dog.
Yes, so, this cemetery's there, but once the State Developmental Farm shuts down or relocates, which it does, reading on the history, it relocated like several times over the past century, until now it's basically the group home system. But this brings into an interesting thing. Here's a cemetery, and it's being used upwards until the 1920s. And then people forget it's there.
Yeah.
The university is founded in the late 60s, and nobody knows where this cemetery is, except that it's somewhere on what is designated as school grounds. But nobody knows where it is. So the next time somebody goes, how does a city go lost? There's a whole cemetery that was lost under 40 years, and they knew kind of where it was. There were people alive who knew exactly where it was, but nobody knew where it was.
Yeah. Remind me to tell you about Oliver Cromwell's head sometime. This is a similar story.
Yeah. And so, anyway, you get this construction worker who's like, oh yeah, I guess we found this. And the couple of the professors who do archaeology are like, okay, we need to go talk to the chancellor. Go talk as high up as we can. Yeah. Because the construction worker also says, yeah, sometimes we've just poured the concrete over the bones.
Yikes.
Yeah. So, they've, dug, oh, look, there's some bone picking up, oh, well, pour the foundation. So that has happened in some of this. And there's 3 buildings being built almost at once out there, or they were in sequence. It's we're building this one, and they're all right beside each other. So we know which building is next, and so it goes to the Chancellor, and the Chancellor just, in an emergency meeting, Chancellor goes, okay, construction crews, you have Friday off. You have the weekend off too. You guys go out there and dig up what you can. Find as many graves as you can in 2.5 days.
The construction workers?
No, the archaeologists.
Oh, okay,
And
that makes a lot more sense. I was like, why would you ask construction workers to find graves?
Oh, no, some of them knew where they'd seen signs before and can go, oh, we think we just put the shovel in the ground, flipped it, and thought we saw a bone here. That could help out too, but
yeah.
So, yeah. So eventually they found, I can't remember how many they said. I don't even know if they know exactly how much they found. Because some of this could have been mixed together, some of it, it was a mess anyway up there.
Yeah.
But they got as many bones as possible, and they just reinterred them at the other end of campus, where there was never any plan to do any construction there. Just put plaque up and kind of have it marked in records. Yeah, this is the remains. Don't touch.
Yeah. Well, at least they labelled it this time.
Yeah, this time it's labeled. Even though I kind of have wanted to go look for that, but I don't know where it's at. I just know it's in this kind of big swath that could be in. So,
Yeah.
and the crazy thing is, I've known so many people who are like, I don't mean to slam on some of these people, but some of them I do. When I'm so spiritual, I get sick when I'm near a graveyard. But they're fine at that when they're like sitting in that building. But then I've met people who are like, I'm so spiritual. Why am I getting a headache when I'm in this brand new building? And it's like,
maybe that's why.
You could be the real deal here. So, especially if nobody has ever told you. So, but I'm just gonna leave out some of those details, but yeah.
Yes.
So, about Cromwell's head. We'll stick that in as an interlude between this and our next, and our more funny part.
I mean, this is probably something that I could do a whole episode on.
Oh no, really?
No, it's not that long, it's fine. But basically, so, Oliver Cromwell,
right,
as we all know.
Big asshole.
Yes,
oh, I'm sorry.
Beheaded the King of England.
Right.
Or had him executed for treason.
Which is odd, he's
Lord
the king.
Protector of England.
How exactly you get the king for treason, I don't know, but... Okay.
I don't know. But he did. Had him executed, became Lord Protector of England. When he died, his son took over for a little while, and then Charles II came back, and restoration. And it's famous for being a very fun part of history because it's when all the parties came back, because Oliver Cromwell was a Puritan and did not like fun. That's what we are taught in school.
I thought you meant the political parties, so okay.
No.
Even though that would be, I could see him actually disbanding one of the political parties too, and just saying, "Oh, that goes against."
Yeah, well, the thing is when the part of the country that I'm from is also where Oliver Cromwell is from.
Okay.
So we learnt a lot about him in school because he's local, and the way that part of history was taught to us in school was that Charles I, the king that got executed, was in the wrong.
Right. Cromwell set things right.
He wanted to dissolve Parliament.
Good point.
And rule as like an absolute monarchy. With no Parliament, no advisors, just the king. And Oliver Cromwell, like, his army was, like, colloquially known as the Roundheads.
Right.
Because they wore round helmets. But their, like, official name were, like, the Parliamentarians. Because they were pro-democracy. So we were taught that Oliver Cromwell was in the right, actually, and Charles I was in the wrong because he wanted to dissolve Parliament. And all Oliver Cromwell wanted to do was make sure that people had the right to, like, have a say in how their country was run, and so that we could have a democracy and have Parliament, and that even though he was a bit of a dick, you know, and a bit over the top with his religious stuff, he just wanted people to be moral and good.
And then you talk to an
Irishman, and he just went
a
bit too hard about it. We didn't learn about any of the stuff that he did in Ireland or anything like that. Oliver Cromwell was just a local, like, folk hero who happened to be in charge of England for a while. But yeah, so he died, his son took over for a little while, his son died because his son was a weakling, and then Charles II came back and he took over, and that was when we had the Restoration. What we also got taught was that Charles II, to make an example of Oliver Cromwell, had Oliver Cromwell's body dug up, like disinterred, put on trial for treason, for killing the king, found him guilty, obviously, because he did in fact kill the king, and had him hung, drawn and quartered.
After he's already been a corpse for a while.
After he was already dead. He'd been dead for, like, a number of years. Had him hung, drawn, and quartered. The four quarters were sent to the four quarters of England, and his head was put on a spike in the Tower of London.
Okay.
A couple of years later, there was a big storm, and the head blew off the spike. Or, like, the spike blew down or something. The head blew down. And the guardsman who was, like, patrolling that night took the head home.
Hey, free head. Wait.
Just stole the head.
Yeah.
And took it home with him. And so that's fun, because why the hell would you do that? But, you know, they lived in different times.
Yeah.
And then it just went missing and no one knew where it was.
Oh, okay.
For a while. It just went missing.
Did he know that was Cromwell's head? Or did he just think it was a random head?
I don't know. No one really knows. But
because
every couple 100 years, it kind of cropped up again.
Okay.
In, like, consecutively more random places. Because it showed up with, like, a private collector. In, like, they had, like, the cabinets of curiosity. In, like, the late 1700s.
Those are, like, miniature circus-like things, right?
Yes.
Freak
shows.
The
freak shows, but for stuff that isn't alive.
Okay.
So it showed up in one of those. Not in England. It's a Dutch guy. Whose name I can't remember. And then it went kind of quiet again. And then in the Victorian era, it showed up in some rich guy's house. And the Victorians were freaks.
Yes.
So it showed up in this guy's house and it got passed around to people at dinner parties. So they could say that they'd held Oliver Cromwell's head. And then it sort of disappeared again, and then it's like kept just popping up in different people's houses and like different people's private collections. So at one point it showed up in the hands of a drunk stage magician who was down on his luck. And he thought, you know what, this is a fantastic thing that I've got a hold of. I'm going to set up a whole, like,
thing.
I guess,
you can
exhibition type thing surrounding it. Yeah. Like the cabinets of curiosities again. But like he was going to make people pay to like hold it and pass it around. And that was how he was going to earn money. But eventually he sold it and then it kind of disappeared again. And, you know, it's like this sort of thing where it crops up every once in a while and then someone loses track of it. Because it gets sold or it gets lost or something like that. In the 1960s, it crops up again in an auction catalogue for, like, antiques. And Oliver Cromwell's surviving family members find out, like ancestors, find out that it's for sale in this antiques auction catalogue. And they go, hey, that's our ancestor's head. Can we have it back, please? This was the era of, like, very beginner DNA testing.
Oh, so you could double check. Is this authentic?
So they DNA tested it, and they found that it was, in fact, Oliver Cromwell's head.
Wow.
And therefore, because these people were related to Oliver Cromwell, they were allowed to have the head back. So they were given the head back, and they decided that to stop this whole thing where it goes missing every so often and crops up again in random places, they were going to have it buried in like a proper like wooden box, like a proper box.
Yeah.
And they got permission from Sydney Sussex College, Cambridge University, which is the college that he attended as a student. They got permission from the college to bury the box with his head in, like, within the grounds.
Okay.
I should mention that the whole reason why they had to DNA test it is because it was completely unrecognizable.
What, you couldn't even tell it was a skull?
Basically, because, like...
Oh, jeez. Everybody's been handling it.
Before they put severed heads on spikes, they'd like tar them.
Oh,
so a lot of the features weren't that recognizable anyway. And then it had been passed through so many like people's hands that weren't like looking after it properly that it had all like worn away, and it was basically just like a blob. But yeah, so they got permission from Cambridge University to bury box of his head, like on the Sydney Sussex College grounds, and this was in like the 90s, I think. And they got together a group of, it was like 2 or 3 of his surviving ancestors and the gardener at the time got together and they buried the box, and they didn't mark where they buried it.
Jesus.
Since then, the gardener and at least one of the surviving ancestors has died.
Oh.
So we are getting to, and the last one I think is quite old. So we're getting to the point where no one is going to know where the box is buried.
So they're going to find it again. Oh, okay.
Eventually.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that because no one knows where it is, no one's going to go looking for it.
Yeah.
But they've put like a little plaque up at the entrance to the college that says like somewhere in these grounds Oliver Cromwell's head is buried. So people know it, like that's the college that it's in.
That's the new scavenger hunt.
But no one's gone looking for it yet, and quite rightly, because that would be quite disgusting. But no, it was quite funny because you know the Extinction Rebellion protesters.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, was it a couple of years ago?
Okay.
It feels like a couple of years ago, but I don't know if it was or not. They dug up the lawn.
Oh, just to find
one of the Cambridge colleges, not to try and find Oliver Cromwell's head. They just dug up the lawn for the sake of it. I don't understand Extinction Rebellion and like what they're doing, but yeah, they dug up the lawn of one of the Cambridge University colleges, and I can't remember if it was like that one or not. But I remember thinking at the time, did they find the head? So it might have been that one. But yeah, so Oliver Cromwell's head is buried on a Cambridge University campus, but no one knows where. And that is why your story reminded me of it.
That because you could easily miss these things. So
yeah, so we got told that whole story in primary school. I grew up knowing this.
All we know is we have a city named Cromwell nearby-ish.
I've been to his house twice. On school trips.
Okay.
But it's funny because I went to university and like we started talking about like we're doing a module on like early modern drama and stuff. So we're talking about like the Caroline period, which is like the Restoration and stuff.
Okay.
Because that's when theatre was allowed again.
Oh,
and,
yes.
So obviously we started talking about all the Oliver Cromwell stuff, and I was just like, what do you mean? He's evil. Who is teaching you this? And they're just like, any teacher who is sane. And I'm just like, oh god.
The Irish?
It's a very regional thing to learn how we did about Oliver Cromwell.
Yeah. We've got people like that too, but we got people like that today. Come on, how do you think some people still get elected? Anyway,
let's continue. Next story.
Let's have another tale of democracy, and So, okay, this is a little more lighthearted, and it's just it kind of ends with a tyrannical government ignoring the will of the people because they refuse to acknowledge.
January 6th, 2022.
No!
2020.
No, it ends with a tyrannical government ignoring that we wanted to honor our greatest mayor of all time.
Oh, God. Please say you are the town with the dog as the mayor.
No. This is, let me just say, this is an excuse to say his name as many times as possible in a podcast. So, this guy was he was a Republican. He was a 4-time mayor of Fort Wayne, Indiana. 1934 to 47, then he lost an election, and then he got re-elected in 51. And he had an unfortunate death of a kidney infection a few years later. And some people insist he might have actually been able to make 5-time if he hadn't died.
Yeah.
So, yes, and he is known forever by his name, Harry Balls.
Oh, yeah.
You have heard of Harry Balls. Everybody knows.
Well, no, but we've got politicians with similar names.
Yes. I mean, he's apparently he really was honest to God popular in an area which at the time was Democrat and he's Republican, but they kept putting him in office because he was competent. But years later, I mean, they kept trying to honor him. There was a street called Harry Balls, and his street sign keeps getting stolen because people love Harry Balls. So, they've unfortunately now changed all of his street signs to H.W. Balls.
Yeah.
Tragedy! A couple years ago, they were building a new city hall. They wanted to move all government. And they put up, okay, what do we vote? What names? They put the standard internet poll up. And Harry Balls won by a landslide. And they decided, no, we're not going to name it Harry Balls building. It's like, why? Why, guys? Come on, people.
Why not?
It's a legitimate name for a legitimate mayor. Who is legitimate? No, it's going to be Citizen Square. How boring do you have to be to just name it Citizen Square? I mean,
that is so boring.
We also have, I mean, you could have named it after, like, many Native American leaders that were in this area.
Yeah.
But no, if you didn't want to go Harry Balls, but no. No, I mean, that's just a very short story of disappointment. So let's all remember Harry Balls tonight.
Yes.
Yes. Isn't that just a better note of happiness after dealing with dead bodies? So
we will remember Harry Balls.
Yes. Every time you say his name, I don't know what happens. I don't know.
Something must happen.
Yes. Okay. And we'll just end on part 3 here, which is, I'm calling it The Last Stop Before Greatness, which I think actually is was one of the unofficial names, or unofficial terms for it.
Okay.
But, let's picture this. It's the early 80s. Woo! You're running a comedy. Decide to start a comedy club.
Sounds like what we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, you get this idea. So you get to have a local comedy club owner who is looking around, and cable TV is just kind of exploding. It's just now kind of getting started and going, and kind of like you had the problem with switch over the digital cable a couple years ago, and all these streaming services, there's almost not enough content to just start filling up everything. So he gets this idea that he should just do a talk show. And he kind of is, you might say he's a little full of himself, but he's like shopping around trying to get HBO and all to carry his talk show. If he starts it.
As you do.
And he kind of gets this interesting counter proposal. C and B-list celeb comedians could be sent to his comedy bar, do sets, get interviewed, and the interviews on his show were basically the test interviews before those guys went to the real late-night network shows.
Yeah.
So you'd have a comedian come in, do their thing, they would give him a list of questions to ask in advance. And somebody in Hollywood is sitting there watching tapes of how they respond and how well the audience liked them. And that would determine if they were on Letterman or Carson or whatever in a couple weeks. And when they went on there, they got the same questions. Their responses were a little more polished because they were told how to alter their stuff. And it was just, some of these guys you would see like a week or two after their appearance on Late Night, they've got a show coming on the network in the fall. Because they managed to pass their test here in this local club that was being monitored closely. And this continued up through the 90s, I think, until he was just kind of decided, I'm getting a little too old to be doing this. I've done my thing, and they don't do it anymore, which is kind of a shame, because it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could kind of tell people they're like, that guy's not going anywhere. But you could also be like, wait, someone, Blorbo was in our town at this point, and we could go find that and go, dang, that's when he got approved. Because we're already, in a weird way, we're already a test market for, like, various products. Like, Pepsi or Coke wants to unleash a strange flavor, we get it. Like, before anyone else. Because, quote-unquote, our demographic is close to blah, 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 blah. So I guess if people like somebody, if certain jokes will fly here, they'll go nationwide. If certain just situational comedy things happen here, it works out. So, I was just kind of blown away when I'm like, there was somebody I watched one episode. I remember being in high school, because I'm old, and watching one episode, and then like a couple weeks later I noticed the same comedians on Letterman, and I stayed up for it, and I'm like, am I having a stroke? These are the same questions. He's answering the same way, except better. So that's when he kind of got the idea, wait a second. But they didn't really officially state this till like he was close to retirement. And it's like, we were doing this the whole time. Like all these stars. And I mean, you would go into this comedy club when I was finally over 21. You would go into this place and just see like the little placards up of when somebody who's like, I remember their show on TV, and it's their little thing that's like, they were here on this date. And this guy was here on this date, and so I name names, but the only name that's actually coming to mind is somebody that's gone total conservative lately. Like,
oof.
But he was there. I mean, that was like literally before he got his Tool-based comedy show. That was his last stop before the network said, here's your show, here's your contract. Yeah. You are now famous because you did well here.
Lovely.
So, screw New York. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So,
I mean, what does New York have that Indiana doesn't?
Let's see here. Rudy Giuliani. No. Wait, they can keep them. Wait, we had pets. Damn it. Actually, they are Broadway. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but like other places have theaters.
Yeah, and we've got. I haven't been to the theater here in a while. And I know so many people who are in theater.
You need to start going to the theater.
Oh, I need to. Yeah, affording it's more like time. It's
yeah, that too.
Yeah. So, do I have a day off?
We're quite lucky because the Globe does really cheap tickets, standing tickets.
Oh.
Where you can go and watch Shakespeare and like stand in the pit, and the tickets cost I think £10.
I watched this at the Globe.
I've done it. It's brilliant. But
you see, here they'd be
the caveat here is that you need a whole afternoon free.
Yeah. Here it would be like...
they start at like 2 p.m. and go on for 3 or 4 hours. And if you leave your spots where you're standing, someone will fill it and then you won't be able to see a thing.
Yeah.
So I got quite lucky and I got really close to the front when I went. But
here
if I'd moved...
Here in the States, they'd be charging like $100 for that. Here, have the honor of standing in this historical spot, doing as it was done years ago. Like,
yeah, well, that's the whole reason why the Globe has the cheap tickets is because back when the Globe was like that, that those tickets would have been the cheapest tickets.
Yeah,
they used to be like a penny. So now they're £10.
Which, adjusted for inflation, looks about right.
Yeah. So those tickets are the cheapest tickets because they were the cheapest tickets when it was Shakespeare's Globe.
Yeah. No, if you
the only thing they don't do, which I think would be hilarious personally, is there used to be a specific ticket you could buy if you were very, very rich in Shakespeare's Globe, where you could pay a ton of money to sit in a seat on the stage.
Oh, not even in the balconies, on stage?
On the stage. And it was the most expensive ticket. Because it was basically like a ticket that was designed for nobles with more money than sense, so that they could show off their fancy clothes. Your job now is to wrap us up.
I have to do the wrap up? Oh, gee.
Yeah!
Goodness.
I have my funky outro thing that I stick at the end, so you have to do the wrap up, so I'm not repeating myself.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Join us next time when our subject will be, I have no idea. I could come back anytime and just... Yeah, at some point we gotta touch on what is Henry Cavill up to, and why did he suddenly decide to get everybody Googling what Warhammer is all of a sudden? But it's true. I mean,
Let's wrap up.
Yes, we are wrapping up, and we hope you enjoyed us today, and hope, let's see, we don't have any sponsors, do we? No.
Nope.
Somebody sponsor us.
Someone pay me.
Maybe a skeleton supply company, I don't know. Those did exist. So, oh yeah.
Yep.
You didn't set up a Patreon, did you?
I have not set up a Patreon.
You haven't set up Patreon?
We do have a Tumblr.
Yes! Okay, yes, which I'm sure will be in the outro.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yikes. Okay. Wow. How to send us off. Okay.
This is why I don't do it.
Yes. Well, if you have any more questions or comments, you could find us various places. I, for now, can be found on Twitter at Gwen's Dad until, Twitter explodes in a fireball of God knows what. I haven't picked anything else yet. Also at InquisitorSide.com Tumblr.
Yeah.
And, I can't quite think of anything else to send us off with. So, and if you are an organization that doesn't like the fact that I was talking about dead bodies on your campus, well, we'll just talk about that later. And if you don't say anything, nobody will know it's you, right? Okay.
That is a very good point. It is in your best interests to not
stay
us for talking
quiet
about dead bodies on your campus.
Hey, I never signed anything.
I definitely didn't sign anything.
It's been over 20 years since these events happened, so yeah. Okay, so, well, you know where to find me. You know where to find you, or you're going to tell us where to find you. And you know where to find this podcast, because obviously you're listening to it.
Yes. You do indeed.
Yes, so, from those of us here at the... I haven't named my branch of the studio. I should name this.
This is a studio?
Yes! Don't you have a studio? Come on! Okay, I'm in the living room right now. I'm not in my studio. And that was Bailey giving her opinion on things. But, anyway, from those of us here at Hey I Like, bye.
Yeah. Goodbye from my childhood bedroom.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've made it all the way to the end, congrats! You are officially much stronger than half of our friends. If you are enjoying listening to this podcast, please subscribe to get notified when we update, or follow us on Tumblr at Hey I Like, all lowercase. That's all for now. See you next time on Hey I Like.